Would you encourage baptism in the Holy Spirit?
That's kind of a different theological. I think that means. I think that happens theologically when you're become a believer.
Okay.
That you are automatically baptized in the Holy Spirit.
Okay.
It's only this group really, or as you get to this side of the spectrum,
Yeah.
that they would believe, no, that's a separate
Yeah.
event than belief. Which I just don't happen to think so. And that argument comes out of Acts, when things happen separately. How I would, and where you see people are baptized in the Holy Spirit after believing, how I would explain that is Acts is a transitional book, meaning that Jesus had to go to heaven before he sent the Holy Spirit. So you could believe in Jesus like as a disciple, but the Holy Spirit wasn't sent until Jesus ascended up to heaven. So thus, the 12 apostles were baptized in the Spirit at Pentecost, Acts 2. But they might have believed in Jesus before that point. However, we're on this side of Acts, so the Holy Spirit's already sent, and so I believe all those things happen at the same time.
So, with Jesus, the Holy Spirit did not come with him. It came separate after.
The Holy Spirit. So Jesus was filled with the Holy Spirit. However, the Holy Spirit was sent to believers after Jesus left.
Okay.
And he discusses that in John. He says, "I'm going to leave, but I'm going to send you another counselor."
So he kind of preps them for it.
Yeah, he's coming, and you're going to be filled with the Holy Spirit in a way you've never experienced God before.
Okay, so in their sense, only the 12 apostles were they baptized in the Holy Spirit as a separate thing from what you think.
Well, and other people in Acts. That's just one example. Yeah.
But for our sake though, like for us, as soon as we're believers, we already baptized in the Holy Spirit because the Holy Spirit has already come down to earth.
That's what I think.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're on this side of Acts.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's already happened. That's more understandable and easier.
That's
for
probably
us.
that is definitely what your church believes.
Yeah.
And it's really, as you get to the far side of continuum where people
Yeah.
feel differently. And I can understand where they get that from. So I don't want to talk bad about it. It's a different theological view.
Mm-hmm. So I was talking to one of the counselors at DCF
Okay.
about it, and I told her, okay, so from your guys' point of view, if someone isn't baptized in the Holy Spirit, like officially baptized in the Holy Spirit as a separate event,
Yeah.
Does that mean they're less of a Christian? Like they're like a worse Christian because they don't fully have God's grace in them or something? And then what she told me was like she used the example of like a Coke bottle. Once you become a believer, you're filled to the brim with it. With God's love,
I
just
get
as
it.
Coke, and then when you're baptized in the Holy Spirit, it overflows.
That's interesting.
And then,
Yeah.
And then so, along with that, she said, so people that haven't been baptized in the Holy Spirit have treasures in heaven, but those that have been baptized in the Holy Spirit have just more treasures in heaven.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So then I didn't agree with that because then it's like, okay, so what I've been taught was a lie growing up. So I'm actually a real Christian.
Yeah, I don't know if everybody on that camp would explain it that way. However, how I would, in some ways I would agree. If you're not baptized in the Holy Spirit, you're not a believer. But for me, that comes with becoming a believer. So that, obviously, they go together. They are simultaneous, is what I think.
So to simplify things, you would say as soon as you're a believer, your Coke bottle is already starting to overflow.
I wouldn't use that analogy because I think you can be a believer and have a fruitless life. Or at least have periods of fruitlessness. Which, if you've been a believer long enough, you've probably experienced at least a day of, if not months, of fruitlessness.
Okay.
And so, I don't know, it's hard for me to use that analogy because that sounds like fruit.
Okay.
Which maybe some people on this camp would correlate with baptism of the Holy Spirit. You know what I mean? So it's hard to be, I don't know if I could use that analogy to answer that question.
Okay.
But I would say, yes, you're baptized in the Holy Spirit. You may or may not yield to the Spirit that we learn in Galatians. So Galatians says you must yield to the Spirit, and thus you would display the fruits of the Spirit. That doesn't mean you weren't baptized in the Spirit. It just means you might not be walking in the Spirit. Walking in the Spirit means you're living in the Spirit, you're yielding to Him, you're submitting to Him, and the fruits of the Spirit are being displayed in your life.
Okay.
So I would say you can be a believer, and that is not happening on a regular basis. That's definitely missing. And that believer needs to get with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And